Hello everybody, reading the next part of Max and the Millions by Ross Montgomery for Faber Children's Publications, illustrated by David Litchfield of Faber Illustrations. I was going to do a recap for you, but if you need a recap, have a look at chapter 21. Chapter 22. Max and Sasha were having makeovers. The two boys were tied down to the ping-pong table. The Sparkle Pony Summer Club had been working their magic on them for some time. Max wore several layers of sparkly eyeshadow, while Sasha had been bronzed a shade of orange called Luscious Carrot. "Joy, please, let us go," Sasha begged. "Nuh-huh, Sasha," Joy laughed. "You have to do everything we say, remember?" She started untying the ropes that held the boys to the table. "Girls, get the scissors. It's time to do their hair." The boys took their chance to escape. They flew out of the games room, the girls following close behind in a hurricane of glitter. They made it to the dorm just in time, slamming the door and shoving a chair under the handle. The girls clawed at the wood, hissing like cats and waving lipsticks menacingly under the frame. "Wow, I've never seen them this bad before," said Sasha. "At least all their candy's in here with us. If they had more sugar now, they'd probably..." He stopped. Max was sitting on the edge of his bed staring miserably at one of his fantasy books. The cover showed a battle between two kings, one good and one evil. Their swords locked, surrounded by their ruined kingdoms and thousands of dead and wounded. He sighed. "Look at us. Mr. Darrow's world is upstairs, fighting for survival. Millions of people are relying on us to come back." He threw the book across the room. "And we're stuck down here, getting our nails done by a bunch of 5-year-old girls." Sasha sat beside him. "I know it's frustrating, but if Joy squeals on us, then Mr. Darrow's secret will be discovered and we'll be expelled." He patted Max on the back. "We just have to wait till she's calmed down a little. Then we can go back upstairs." "We don't have time for that," Max groaned. "Don't you know about the butterfly effect?" Sasha looked blank. "Mr. Darrow told me about it," Max explained. "Imagine if 1,000 miles away a butterfly flaps its wings. It doesn't affect us, right?" Max spread his arms wide, holding them out to the room. "But the world is made up of trillions of tiny things that are all connected to each other. That one small gust from the butterfly's wings could join up with another gust of wind, which travels up into the atmosphere and joins up with 1,000,000,000 more tiny bits of wind, and it grows and grows until 1,000 miles later, that one small gust has become a hurricane." "What's that got to do with us?" said Sasha. "It means one small change can ruin everything. Think about it. We swatted a fly and it started a war. What if it keeps building? What if Luke fails and the Bing King takes over the floor and it's all because of us?" He shook his head. "I can't let that happen. This is about more than keeping Mr. Darrow's secret safe. There's a whole world counting on us." Sasha groaned. "But even if we could get into Mr. Darrow's room, those flies are going to attack us again the second we step inside. What can we do?" Max smiled. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Mr. Darrow's microscope goggles. "Do you have a phone?" Mr. Pitt marched into the foyer of the Pitt building. It was the stunning centrepiece of the new construction, with a polished wood floor, a high glass ceiling, and a gigantic X-shaped walkway that ran from one side of the first floor to the other. "Oi, foreman!" The foreman was talking to a handful of his exhausted workers. He had the look of a man who had spent several weeks being shouted at. "What is it I mean, Mr. Pitt?" Mr. Pitt was furious. "What are you still doing in here? The foyer's finished. I told you to start cleaning the grounds. The governors will be arriving soon. The school has to look perfect. The foreman glowered at him. It might look finished, Mr. Pitt, but there are a number of safety issues that need attention. Most of the building work has been done too quickly, and if we don't fix it now... There's no time for that, Mr. Pitt snapped. All of you, outside now. The foreman shared a look with the workers, and they stormed out. Mr. Pitt smiled. Even he'd been a little worried that the work wouldn't be completed in time, but he had to admit that the Pitt building looked magnificent. He was one step closer towards the fruition of his grand plan. Nothing could ruin it now. His mobile rang. Mr. Pitt looked at the screen and frowned. It wasn't a number he recognised. Hello? Hello? The voice at the other end of the line was high-pitched and wobbly. It sounded like someone trying to hide an American accent. Who is this? Said Mr. Pitt. My name, said the voice. Of course. I'll tell you my name right away. It's Mrs. Journalist. Mr. Pitt raised an eyebrow. Mrs. Journalist? No, that's not right, said the voice. Sorry, what I mean to say is that I am a journalist called Mrs. Max. It sounded like someone in the background was getting pretty annoyed with Mrs. Max. How can I help you, Mrs. Max? Mrs. Max cleared her throat. Well, Mr. Pitt, I have some excellent news for you. I'm from the magazine Great Boarding Schools Monthly, and we'd like to interview you for an article about what an inspirational headmaster you are. Mr. Pitt gasped. That's wonderful. We need to do the interview right away, said Mrs. Max. Our office is on the other side of town, so if you leave now, it should only take you 20 minutes or so. Why can't we do the interview over the phone? Said Mr. Pitt. There was a long pause. That's a really good question, said Mrs. Max. Because... Is it because you need to take my photo as well? Suggested Mr. Pitt. Yes, that's it, cried Mrs. Max with relief. We need your photo. Now, as I said, it's a 20-minute drive from St. Goliath, so... Mr. Pitt was already running to his car. I'll be there in 10. Max and Sasha were crouched in the bushes outside the dorm window. Sasha put away his phone and tapped Max on the shoulder. Did it work? Is he leaving? Max followed Mr. Pitt's car through the microscope goggles. Even from this far away, he could still make out the look of delight on the headmaster's face as he sped through the gates. Yes, let's go. The two boys shot from the bushes and into the sparkling new foyer of the Pitt building. Sasha whistled. Wow, look at that walkway. This place is amazing. Max shrugged. Looks amazing, sure. He pointed to a staircase. See those screws? They're supposed to be lined up. This is a rush job. They could cause all kinds of problems later on. Mr. Darrow always used to say, "Oh, I'm sorry I asked," muttered Sasha. They snuck down the corridor until they found the sports hall. All the equipment was piled in the middle of the room. Max rifled through it until he found what he was looking for. A fencing mask, a handful of skipping ropes, and a big whiteboard and pen. There, he said. Now let's take these to the boarding house and... Max froze. A man was striding across the sports hall towards them with a face like thunder. The foreman. You two! What are you doing? He shouted. This is a building site. Max panicked. They'd been caught red-handed. The foreman pulled his phone out of his pocket. I'm calling Mr. Pitt right away. You with the eyeshadow and the earrings. What's your name? Max glowered. They're not earrings. They're hearing aids. And that was when Max remembered that being severely deaf could sometimes be severely useful. He turned to the foreman and smiled. I can't hear what you're saying. The foreman looked blank. What? I'm deaf. Max pointed at his hearing aids. I can't understand when you're shouting at me like that. It's actually quite upsetting for me, if you must know. Sasha's eyes lit up. That's right. Don't you know how insensitive it is to shout at someone with hearing problems? That's the sort of thing that can get you fired. The foreman panicked. Hey, there's no need for that. I didn't realise. Sasha patted him on the back. Hey, don't beat yourself up about it. It's an easy mistake to make, isn't it? Anyone could do it. The foreman nodded gratefully. That's right. Sasha smiled. We'll just take what we need and go. I'll make sure Max doesn't make an official complaint against you. Does that sound good? The foreman looked relieved. Yes, thank you. Don't mention it, said Sasha. Have a good day. The foreman practically skipped out of the room. It was the Sasha effect. 5 seconds with him and anyone was smiling. Now that, said Max, was teamwork. You were great, said Sasha, giving him a high five. Max grinned. Let's go. We've got just enough time to save the floor people before Pip gets back. Luke will have already spoken with the Reds and the Greens by now. He'll be waiting for us. Sasha looked worried. How are we going to get into Mr. Darrow's room without Joy seeing us? We'll climb the gutter outside his window and sneak in, said Max. Joy's waiting outside our dorm, remember? Once we're done, we can climb back through our window and she'll be none the wiser. Sasha gulped. But what if she gets into our dorm somehow and sees we're not there? Max rolled his eyes. She's 5 years old. What's she going to do? Break down the door? Joy broke down the door. It hadn't taken long for the Sparkle Pony Summer Club to find the large wooden statue of St. Goliath in the corridor. With 49 girls holding it and Joy riding it like a rodeo bull, the statue made an ideal battering ram. The door gave on the 10th try. Sasha! Joy cried, leaping into the dorm. No more hiding! Come out and play with... Joy looked around in shock. The room was empty and the window was open, curtains flapping in the breeze. They've gone! She cried. Quick, upstairs! Get them before... But the Sparkle Pony Summer Club weren't listening to her. They were staring at something on the floor, their mouths open and their eyes captivated. It's here, one of them whispered. It was a large cardboard box, hidden behind the curtains. Written on the side were the words, confiscated candy, keep out. Our sweets, said one of the girls. I thought he'd thrown them all away. Joy tore off the lid and gazed inside. An entire summer's worth of forbidden sweets lay in the box. Chocolates, jelly beans, gummy bears. She held up a handful and smiled, letting the sweets pour through her fingers. Girls, change of plan. We're staying right here.